Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, the other night I was playing Hansa Teutonica with some friends, and one of my friends said, hey, let's make this interesting. So we stopped playing Hansa Teutonica. That one's for you, Megan. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at my top 10 games based on movies and TV shows. Let's take a look. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so my top 10 games based on movies and TV shows. A couple of things I need to talk about before we begin. First of all, I only selected one game from a specific IP. So there may be many games from a specific IP that would have been on this list. Hello, Star Trek and Star Wars. But I've only selected one from specific IPs. Also, too, some of these games represent kind of families of games. And I decided in that case I was not going to specifically mention other games within that game family, and I'll kind of elaborate a little bit on that when I get to them. But let me just go ahead and get started. First off, I want to talk a little bit about my honorable mentions. I've got a few here. Sons of Anarchy from Gale Force 9 was a great game. It's kind of a hybrid of a Euro and an Ameritrash game. But it blends, it works together. Area control, worker placement, but also combat. Very, very fun game. The Godfather, Corleone's Empire, which was from CMON. It's another great game. Of course, you're trying to battle over New York. Again, it's kind of a Euro set collection, but you're also taking out mobsters and stuff, and that one was pretty fun there too. Disney Villainous from Ravensburger, of course, is a great game based on many different Disney films, and it's just kind of an asymmetrical game. It's almost kind of a solitaire. Each person's playing their own little solitaire game with some interaction. But I really do like Disney Villainous. Back to the Future, Back in Time from Funko, which is a great game based on the Michael J. Fox film, where you're trying to get your Marty's parents to fall in love, and you're trying to get the DeLorean, back in time, and you're collecting the things you need in order to make that happen and keep Biff away. That one is really fun as well. And Jaws, also from Ravensburger. Jaws was a fun game. It kind of takes place in 2 acts. It's kind of a hidden movement game and a kind of a bluffing game. And how you play out the first act depends. Is kind of sets the stage for how things are going to work out in the second act. Really enjoyed Jaws. So that's 5 games I got on my honorable mentions, and I could have mentioned more, but I'm going to hold it right there for now. Let's go ahead and get into it. Number 10 is another game from Ravensburger. This is Horrified. Horrified is based on the classic monster movies. Of course, Dracula, Wolfman, Invisible Man, Frankenstein, etc., etc., etc. So you've got these classic movies, but this is a great cooperative game, and it's a light game. It's a super light game, but it's still fun. I don't know what it is about this game that is just a great great way to experience that monster feeling. And when I play this game, it reminds me so much of the film The Monster Squad. And I got to tell you, when I first saw that as a kid, I loved that show, Monster Squad. Then when I saw it years later as an adult, I thought, boy, those kids swearing at adults are just disrespectful. And then I saw it again last year. I watched it again, and I thought to myself, this is just one big Pepsi commercial. Seriously, every shot they've got a Pepsi. But anyway, that feeling I had as a kid watching that movie is the same feeling I get when I play Horrified. It's a fun, scary game, and I really like it. This is Horrified. That is from Ravensburger. That is my number 10. My number 9 is a game that I just started playing recently. I've done a couple of live playthroughs of this, and it was actually this game that actually made me think about maybe doing this list. This is Night of the Living Dead, a Zombicide game. So this takes the mechanics of Zombicide, and it transplants it into the Night of the Living Dead film, the original Night of the Living Dead film. And it does it very well. And what I like about this, even more than many of the other Zombicide iterations, is it has this wonderful claustrophobia feel. Every other Zombicide game, it feels more like a action shooter game with zombies in it, and this one feels legitimately like a horror game. You can feel the terror in this one in a way. The theme just shines through. Now, I will say some of the scenarios are pretty easy. So just be aware of that. Some of the base scenarios are pretty easy, but some of them are really fun and really engaging and challenging. And I did one live playthrough right before Halloween that was just nothing to it. Super simple, and was very disappointing. And then I did it again a few days later. Did another stream a few days later, and that was tense. That one was tense, and I really liked it. So if you like Zombicide, I'd still urge you to look at this one because it just does such a good job with the theme. But it's fun mechanics. You're going around, you're killing zombies. You start on the Romero side, black and white, but you can upgrade to the Zombicide side to get new advantages and new abilities. And then of course you're searching for the weapons, but the weapons are much more limited than in a standard Zombicide game. So really like that. That is Night of the Living Dead, a Zombicide game. That is from CMON, and that is my number 9. My number 8 movie TV IP game is a game that is, like I said, is in these families of games. There's several versions of this game, an IP, that I could have probably put in here, at least one, but this is the one I went with. This is the DC Comics deck building game. Now, I've said this before, the DC Comics deck building game was the very first deck building game I played that made me fall in love with deck builders. I tried to play one or two before and I just didn't get it, and then I played the DC Comics deck building game. I'm like, this game is amazing. I fell in love with the game. Really enjoyed the DC Comics deck building game. I could have put the Lord of the Rings deck building game on here too, right? And they came out with some, there's the Rick and Morty version, but they're all essentially the same game, so I say they're in the same family of games. But DC Comics deck building game, I still have fun with it. Every time I play it, any of the versions of it, I still just really enjoy it. It's just a good, fun, smart, clean deck building game that, in a sense, it's kind of no frills. But what's fun, and what I mean is you just got the one currency, power. But what I love about the DC Comics deck building game is they did such a good job of allowing you to make fun and interesting combinations and do fun things. And that is the mark of a good deck building. If you can make those combinations and you can make things happen that ordinarily on the surface you wouldn't be able to think you could make happen, but just through the way you're playing the cards and manipulating the cards, you can do really cool things. DC Comics game, deck building game does that very well. So that is why it's there. My number 8 DC Comics deck building game from Cryptozoic. My number 7 is, so technically it was based on a book, the original version, and then the TV series came out and they made the second edition of the board game. So I'm counting it here as being a movie TV game. And maybe I should do a list on games based on books. But this is Game of Thrones, the board game second edition. Game of Thrones, the board game, is kind of based on diplomacy. It's kind of got that same basic system of we reveal our orders. You know, we all kind of talk amongst ourselves, and we reveal orders publicly, simultaneously, and then we kind of can screw each other over as we do it. It's a super fun game set in the Game of Thrones universe. I've got the expansion to it that I still haven't taken this out of shrink. I got to unbox it, and I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to. And this has got this expands the player count. I think to 8 players. Yeah, so this goes 3 to 8 players. I don't know if I'll ever play with that many, but this has got some things in it I thought sounded really cool, like the Iron Bank and stuff. So I'm going to have to find a time when I can play that game again, and hopefully add that expansion in there, and maybe I can do a review of it at some point in the future. But right now, I don't know when it's going to happen. But I really like the game. It's a fun theme. You know, the TV show and the books were really good. The books were much better. I think the first season of the TV show was really accurate. One of the most accurate and faithful adaptations of a book I've ever seen. And then it just kind of kept getting further away from it. And of course, the last season was rather disappointing. One or two high moments that I liked in it, but generally it was very disappointing. And but the game is solid and fun, and I really, really like it. And that is why Game of Thrones, the board game, second edition, from Fantasy Flight Games, is my number 7 movie or TV IP game. Number 6 is a game that just came out late last year, and I ordered it with the all the frills, and I'm still waiting on the frills. I don't think it's the company's fault. We got this whole shipping container mess, and we'd all be... I think all of us in the hobby would be well served to remember there's a lot of crap going on right now, so we're not going to get all the stuff we want to get when we were supposed to get it. You know, that's just the way the world is right now. But this game is amazing, and it is a tie-in with a movie that just came out. This is Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium is a fantastic game based on the Frank Herbert novel, but also the 2021 film. It is thematically, it's got the artwork and stuff from the 2021 film. But this is very cool because it's a worker placement game, but it also does have this kind of battle combat matrix in it that you do at the end of every round in order to gain certain advantages. But this is one of those games that, when it came out, people were just going on and on about it. What a great game this is. What a great game it is. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, I'll bet it's not that great. But I ordered it, took a chance, I ordered it. And I remember thinking to myself, I kind of wanted it to be not that good. Even though I paid for it, I kind of wanted not to like it as much as I did because I wanted to be the guy that was contrary. I wanted to be the guy that said, no, it's not as good as everybody's saying. But I couldn't. I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was a lot of fun. Everybody I played this game with has said it's a lot of fun. I played it at multiple player counts, including solitaire. It's fun at every player count. Really enjoying it. They've got an expansion coming out based around Ix, which was another planet in the universe, not featured in the movie. Kind of a technology planet. And it is supposed to come out here again before too long, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited to get my frills. I just got a email a day or two ago saying that they were finally going to ship the minis and stuff that I had ordered with it. So I'm excited. But I think Dune Imperium is fantastic. Great worker placement game and great IP movie TV game. So that's Dune Imperium. That is from Direwolf, and that is my number 6. My number 5 is this is the representative game of the of this particular film TV franchise. This is Star Trek Ascendancy. Again, I could have had fleet captains on here very easily, maybe even Star Trek Catan. But Star Trek Ascendancy, for me, is just an amazing game. It's not just a Star Trek space game. It's not a combat game. It's really a 4X game. It's a civilization building game. And this is one of those games that's so good, even if you took away the IP, even if it wasn't Star Trek, it would still just be an amazing, solid game. And that's true of a lot of the games on this list. But the Star Trek theme is really a lot of fun. You can play the Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans in the base game. I've reviewed all the expansions where you can play the Andorians, the Cardassians, the Vulcans, and the Ferengi, and then there's a Borg expansion. But it's just a great game. I really like Star Trek Ascendancy. I think it's again, it's one of those games. Every time I play it, I get giddy. It's just and it's not that long a game. Right? It's maybe you can probably play it in 3 hours, right? So you get this big epic feel, but you can do it in an evening. So I really like that one. Star Trek Ascendancy. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. You build the board by laying the tracks, the hyperspace, the warp lanes, and then you build the planets, and you find the planets, and then you draw cards, and you have encounters. So like I say, it's really kind of a 4X, but you can encounter new civilizations. You can conquer them. You can try to culturally take them over. So there's a lot of real fun things there, and you got to kind of, turn a blind eye to a few little things they do that aren't thematically on 100%. But generally, I really enjoy Star Trek Ascendancy. It's a fantastic Star Trek game. It's just a fantastic civilization building game in its own right, space civilization game in its all right. All right, so that is Star Trek Ascendancy. That's from Gale Force 9, and that is my number 5. My number 4 is also from Gale Force 9. This is Firefly the game. Firefly the game is kind of an open world sandbox game where you are a smuggler, a ne'er-do-well. You put together your crew, you go on missions, you accept missions, you're rolling die, you're moving across the galaxy. With the expansions, you can actually attack each other and have some interaction with each other. It's a fun game. It's a game that you got to stay on top of it because you can be doing all this stuff and not really working toward victory if you're not careful. In fact, I remember the first time I played this with Zach, that's what he was doing. We were playing like 2 or 3 hours, and he finally realizes, I'm not even on the board. I've just been doing some fun stuff, and I like that. It's a game that you can go and have fun and explore. And yes, it's a game and you're trying to win, but there's something to be said for just the experience of a game where you just get involved in it and you're just exploring it and having fun with it. Zach actually told me he hated that game, but he really loved that game. Because he, at one point he was coming home. I think he was going to win at one point. I think it was maybe the second game we were playing. He was going to win at one point, and then like he gets like the Federation ship attacks him, and he like had to dump his cargo, and it made him so frustrated. But he loved it. And this was a game that for about 2 or 3 years, I think Sean and Zach and I and maybe a few other people, we'd get together and we play it around Christmas time. Maybe we ought to try to do that again sometime over Christmas break. That'd be a lot of fun. Firefly the game. Firefly the game, that is Gale Force 9. That is my number 4. My number 3, again, this is a game that is from a family of games. And this is Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. Now, again, I could have easily put Marvel Legendary here, but again, I picked the best of kind of the Legendary system. You could argue Legendary Encounters versus Legendary. I'm just going to say all Legendary here, and I'm going to say Legendary Encounters Alien is my favorite. And I kind of go back and forth between that and Marvel, but I'm going to say Alien's my favorite right now. And not only that, but I've played several Alien and Aliens IP games over the years. And I played that Bug Hunt last year, which was fun, enjoyable. I played the Another Day in the Core, which it was all right. It didn't thrill me. And I played others here and there, and none of them does as good job in building the tension and the fear of Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. It does it so amazingly well. Every time I play this game, it's scary. It's, oh my gosh, there's the system where you got the cards sliding toward you that are face down, and you don't know what they are. You don't know if they're events or if they're aliens. You just know if they get they drop down into the combat zone, you're going to have a bad day. These aliens are going to attack you. So what do you do, right? What do you do? And the answer is you have to work together. You have to, and there's this great system of coordinate cards where you can essentially give people attack values and recruit values when they need it. And that was such a cool system. I remember Zach telling me when those cards were coming toward him, he said it's just like in the movie in Aliens when they're going, 2 meters, 3 meters, they're in the room. It's just like that, and it's intense. I can't recommend this game enough. Legendary Encounters Alien is just a brilliant IP game, and it's a brilliant game in its own right. Really love it. The best of the Legendary Encounters systems, and certainly the best alien-themed board games I've ever played. So, Legendary Encounters, an alien deck-building game. That is from Upper Deck. That is my number 3. My number 2 is a game that I played 2016 is when it came out, and I remember they sent me a copy to review a few weeks before it actually came out, and I played with some friends, and I'd gotten in maybe 3 or 4 games before the game was released to the public, and it blew me away. I loved this game. And then a few years later, I did have some minor issues with it, and a few years later, they came out with an expansion that made those things much, much better. But this is a fantastic board game that I like to call Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion. This is Star Wars in a box. This is the original 3 trilogy films. This is, you feel like you're kind of making up your own kind of what if, choose your own adventure, alternate history of the Star Wars films. Essentially, there's a hidden information game. You've got the Empire that's got, there's I think the 32 planets, right? And you've got the Empire that's got ships throughout the galaxy, and the Rebels have a hidden base. They've selected their hidden base at the beginning of the game. And the Empire is trying to find this hidden base, and they're sending out their troops everywhere to find the hidden base. As they're moving, but it's not just simply a war game of them hunting down and trying to find you, because the Rebels don't have nearly as much military potential as the Empire. Rather, the game really centers around missions and sending your characters on different missions, either to sabotage or to attack other characters or try to capture them or turn them to the dark side, or building projects, building a Super Star Destroyer or the Death Star, or just you name it. There's all sorts of different things you can send your characters to do in this game, and they're based on the cards you've got. And it's just so much fun. If you love Star Wars, like I said, this is Star Wars in a box. You really need to get this. My only caveat would be, it's not an inexpensive game, and if you get it, you really, really, really should get the expansion. Now you can play this game without the expansion, and you will have fun with it. You will, but the expansion fixes combat because combat in the original game isn't that great. And to be honest, it's not perfect. I'm not absolutely in love with it even with the expansion, but it's much much better with the expansion. And also too, you just get more missions, more characters, more fun things you can do with the expansion, and more units. So I'd say, if you want to get this but you can't get the expansion, well, get this now and then get the expansion as soon as you can, but get the expansion. Brilliant game, Star Wars Rebellion. I really love it. I was kind of hoping we'd see more expansions for it, and who knows, maybe Fantasy Flight will still do it. They've been surprising me lately. They came out with the expansion to Civilization: A New Dawn. I never thought we'd see. They came out with the expansion to. They just announced the expansion to Star Wars Outer Rim, which is another game I could have put on this list, which I wasn't expecting. They did the expansion of Twilight Imperium, which I wasn't expecting. So, I was expecting them initially, but then Fantasy Flight has kind of moved in some other directions, and I was kind of thinking, well, maybe they've given up on some of these titles, but I was so glad to see that they hadn't. But in any event, Star Wars Rebellion, absolutely fantastic game. That is from Fantasy Flight Games, and that is my number 2. All right, so my number 1 IP game of all time. For those of you that are familiar with my top 10 list, you probably know what this one's going to be. And Fantasy Flight Games, who created this game, they're coming out here within a few days. They're making the general public release for a game that is based on this game. It's kind of a reskin of this game because the original has been out of print for years. And this, of course, is Battlestar Galactica. And I've said this many times. I've said this to my friends that I've played this game with. I have never played a game, and Rebellion comes close. Star Wars Rebellion comes close. But I've never played a game that as beautifully and as intelligently captured the emotion and the feel of its IP the way Battlestar Galactica, the board game, has. Because in the TV show, if you watched the TV show, and if you haven't, I recommend you go back and watch it. I went back and I watched it all again a few years ago. What that series about is the chief overriding feeling of that series was paranoia, was absolute paranoia. You didn't know who your friends were. You didn't know who the good guys were. And because, of course, you have these aliens, Cylons, these robots, Cylons, that many of them look human, and you don't know if they're really your friends or they're really not. And so it was just constantly, you don't know who is who. And the board game does that in a social deduction mechanic. But then the crises that come up are right out of the TV show. And you've got the dials of population, morale, food, fuel. I can't remember. But anyway, you've got to make sure that they all... they can't get to 0, because if any of those dials get to 0, you're dead. If there's too much damage to the ship, you're dead. If your boarding party gets too far into the ship, you're dead. There's so many ways you can die. But you've got to work together, and it's a moment where you got to figure out. It's a game where you got to figure out what is your moment where you absolutely have to trust someone, and when you absolutely have to throw someone under the bus. But the whole game, you're saying, yeah, you're silent. You're constantly accusing people, and that's half the fun of the game. But it is. It just does such an amazing job. Now, I've, of course, have reviewed this game. I reviewed it with Justin years ago. I think we did some playthroughs a couple years ago, Gameathon. And Zach and I, earlier this year or late last year, we did a replay where we went back and we talked about this game and how much fun we have with this game. It's my third favorite game of all time, Battlestar Galactica. I absolutely love it. And I cannot say enough good things about it. Now, I'll be getting the Unfathomable, which is kind of the Cthulhu reskin that Fantasy Flight is doing. Hopefully I'll be getting that here within a few days. And I'm not sure exactly when I'll get a chance to play it. But I got to tell you, I'm really wondering if I will like it as much, because one of the reasons why I love Battlestar Galactica so much is that IP. Now, of course, the question is, if you've not seen Battlestar Galactica, will you enjoy the game? And absolutely you will. Absolutely you'll enjoy the game. But I think if you are a fan of the TV show, you'll like the game a lot better. I only met one person who hadn't seen the TV show that didn't like the game, and that person I think was a little contrary anyway. But I love it. I love it so much. Anyway, that is Battlestar Galactica. That is my number one game for movies, IP, themes, from Fantasy Flight Games. Battlestar Galactica. Check it out. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer, ladies and gentlemen, and I appreciate you checking out this list. Please let me know what you think. Do you like my selections? And what selections would you put on your list of favorite movie and TV IPs? I'd be very eager to find to learn about what you'd like. A lot of times I see games that I think sound interesting, and maybe I can seek them out myself. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Please, like I say, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Please check out my other YouTube channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about military history and books and fun things like that. We have a lot of fun over there as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I recently picked up the new Rick Astley board game, and I was really looking forward to it until I, picked up the instructions and looked through it. All it said was, "You know the rules, and so do I." Please somebody help me on my feet again. You know the rules, and so do I.